A statue sealed behind glass, slowly turning on its own. A dagger buried with a pharaoh that isn't even from Earth, and a massive, mysterious sarcophagus with 3 skeletons sitting in a dark, rotting liquid. These are discoveries found inside Egyptian tombs that shocked experts. This involves a real Egyptian tomb object, but what made it famous happened much later. So the statue is a small carved figure called a shabti, meant to act as a servant for the dead in the afterlife. This specific one dates back to around 1800 BCE and was originally placed inside a burial. It's been sitting in the Manchester Museum in England for decades, but in 2013, staff noticed it had turned slightly inside its display case. The case was locked, so they checked security and didn't see anyone had touched it. That's when they set up a time-lapse camera. And over a few days, the footage showed the statue slowly rotating on its own, turning about 180 degrees. Other objects in the same case hadn't moved at all. A physicist later said vibrations from people walking nearby could cause the base to shift, especially since the statue has a slightly uneven bottom, but even with that explanation, it couldn't fully explain why it only rotated once and stayed in that new position. Turns out a very famous Egyptian pharaoh had a dagger made of space rock. In 2016, when researchers published a study on the tested blade of King Tut, they found it contained around 10% nickel along with cobalt, and that combination matches iron meteorites, not iron produced on Earth. At the time the dagger was made, around 1300 BCE, Egyptians didn't have iron smelting technology yet. Most tools were bronze. Iron objects from that period are extremely rare and usually come from meteorites. Ancient Egyptian texts actually refer to iron as metal from the sky. The dagger also shows high craftsmanship. The blade is smooth and polished, and the gold handle is decorated with all this intricate detail. I don't think there's anything really cooler than having a dagger forged from space metal. So in 2005, a new tomb turned up in the Valley of the Kings, which is already surprising because that place has been explored for centuries. People have been digging there forever, so finding something nobody had touched, that was a big deal on its own. And it was sitting right next to some major royal tombs, so naturally, everyone assumed it was going to be another important burial. They got inside and found 7 wooden coffins and over 20 large storage jars, all of it sealed. Nobody'd been in there since ancient times. And then they opened the coffins, and there was nothing in them. No bones, nothing. What they found instead was all the stuff you'd use to prepare a mummy. Linen wrappings, jars with embalming waste in them, used bandages. So this wasn't a burial chamber for a person, it was more like a storage room. But the coffins were fully built and sealed, ready to go. They just never had anyone placed inside them. Either they were built in advance as extras, or they got repurposed at some point and then just left there. Nobody ever came back for them. In 2018, construction workers in Alexandria were digging when they hit this giant black granite sarcophagus about 5 meters underground. The thing weighed around 30 tons, no inscriptions anywhere on it, which is strange. The ancient Egyptians were kind of known for marking things, so you'd think something this huge would have had some sort of inscription. It was also completely sealed, so people started wondering. Maybe it was someone important, maybe royalty, maybe there was treasure in there. When they opened it, there were just 3 skeletons inside, sitting in this dark reddish-brown liquid. Turned out it was a lovely soup of decomposed organic material mixed with groundwater that leaked in over time. One of the skulls also had a small hole in it. Researchers think that may have come from an arrow, so at least one of these people possibly died violently. But there were no artifacts, nothing really explaining who they were or why they ended up in the same coffin. Based on the style of the sarcophagus though, it's probably from somewhere between 305 and 30 BCE. That's genuinely all anyone really knows. The Screaming Mummy has to be one of the most immediately terrifying archaeological finds in history. I mean, it's a mummified man with a permanent look of agony on his face. The mummy is also called Unknown Man E. His identity was unknown for a long time, but then in 2012, researchers did CT scans and DNA testing and found he was closely related to Ramses III, most likely his son Pentawere. Historical records mention a plot to kill Ramses III, and Pentawere was one of the people named in it. Him being the Screaming Mummy would make sense. His burial was completely different from what you'd expect for a royal. He was not properly embalmed. Instead of clean linen, he was wrapped in sheepskin. In ancient Egypt, sheepskin was considered impure. Combine that with his pained expression, and this all starts looking very intentional. Every other royal mummy was prepared to look peaceful and dignified. This one clearly wasn't. The burial method, the wrappings, the condition of the body, all points to someone being denied a proper burial as part of their punishment. Found in 1817 in the Valley of the Kings by an Italian archaeologist and explorer named Giovanni Belzoni, the Tomb of Seti I is one of the most detailed royal tombs ever found. You could study this place for years and keep noticing new details. I mean, look how covered everything is. The walls are not just decorated, they're packed with full religious texts. The Book of the Dead, the Book of Gates, the Amduat. These were basically instruction manuals for getting through the afterlife. It's laid out step by step. Gates with guards, specific things the king needed to say, to pass through, scenes showing what happens to people who don't make it. It reads like a literal map of where to go and what to do. The ceiling has the night sky mapped out on it, tied into the journey through the underworld. Compared to other tombs, the quality here is noticeably higher. Deeper carvings, a better preserved paint, more complete texts. It would be absolutely insane getting to walk through this place, which you can. It is open to tourists. A lot of what we know about tombs doesn't come from the tombs themselves. Some of it comes from paperwork, specifically records about tomb robberies. There's one called the Abbot Papyrus from around 1100 BCE, which is basically an official government report documenting investigations into break-ins, which tombs were hit, what was taken. And then there's the first papyrus, which has actual confessions in it. One guy describes going into a royal tomb with a group, cracking open the burial chamber and stripping gold straight off the coffin and the body, pulling off jewelry, tearing apart the wrappings, and then splitting everything up between the group after. These were statements taken during interrogations. People got beaten for it, some were executed, and I don't know, it's just cool that we have pretty detailed reports on some of these ancient heists. In 1907, a tomb was found near a town called Raifa with two coffins inside, side by side. They belonged to two men, Kum Nakht and Nakht Ankh. Inscriptions said they were brothers, buried together around 1800 BCE. And that was the story for over 100 years. In 2018, though, researchers ran DNA tests on both mummies. Turns out they had the same mother, but different fathers. They were half-brothers, not full siblings. Inscriptions actually mention their mother, but are kind of vague about their father, which in hindsight lines up with the results. The family situation was apparently more complicated than just two brothers. Both men were still buried with equal care though. Well-made coffins, properly prepared bodies. There was no sign that one was treated better than the other despite the different fathers. For a long time, nobody could pin down where Thutmose II was originally buried. His mummy had been found, but it was in a cache with other royal remains, meaning it had been moved at some point. The actual tomb was a mystery. Recently, though, researchers working on a damaged tomb in the Valley of the Kings found inscriptions and fragments connected to him. The tomb had been hit with flooding over the years, which wiped out or scattered most of what was inside, but pieces of stone with his name on them and bits of burial equipment were enough to make the identification. The layout also matched what you'd expect from a ruler of that period, the early 18th dynasty. The tomb was mostly empty though, probably looted a long time ago, and the flooding took care of a lot of what was left. Egyptian burial sites are full of mummified animals, cats, birds, crocodiles, dogs, millions of them. Most weren't pets, they were religious offerings, things people would buy and leave at temples or burial sites as gifts to the gods. Now, the assumption for a long time was that each wrapped up mummy had a complete animal inside, but when researchers started scanning them with x-rays and CT scans, found that a lot of them don't. Some have only a few bones. Some have random stuff inside, feathers, sticks, bits of different animals maybe. Some have no animal bits at all, just linen wrapped into a shape that looks like an animal. A 2015 study found that a big chunk of the ones they scanned fell into those categories. And the conclusion? Seems that a lot of these were being mass-produced, not always carefully prepared. So instead of rare, carefully made offerings, a lot of these were basically churned out to keep up with demand. People still believed in what they were doing. It was still a genuine religious practice, just not quite as carefully crafted as everyone believed. That's been the video for today. I will catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next one.